name's Mehdi Hasan, and I've come here to go head-to-head with Adair Turner in front of an audience and to challenge him on whether capitalism has a future and what to do about Martin McGuinness, the former IRA commander who gave up arms and is now Deputy First Minister in Northern Ireland. Tariq Ramadan, whose grandfather founded the Muslim Brotherhood. Ranked by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people on earth, his call for reform within the Islamic world has triggered both widespread support and outrage from both Muslims and non-Muslims. I'll be challenging Professor Lindsay at the Oxford Union, going head-to-head over his controversial view that warnings about the dangers of climate change are the world's most famous atheist, Professor Richard Dawkins, to put faith on trial and to ask, is religion Tom Friedman in front of an audience to challenge him on whether US foreign policy is indeed a force. Bernard Kouchner, one of the strongest advocates of the so-called right to intervene, which some say he invented, who until very recently was the chairman of the influential Yesha Settlers Council in the General Sir Mike Jackson over the West's military track record from Kosovo to Kabul. I'll be asking him if Western powers have a right to intervene in faraway countries and whether humanitarian and strategic objectives can ever be reconciled. Sorry, we've got to go to... Go on.
I have a problem with the way you are asking questions.
I'm sure you do.
Let me ask Tom this. President Obama has increased drone strikes, I think, by 5 times more than George W. Bush. He surged troops into Afghanistan. He waged war against Libya, whether we agree with that war or not, without congressional approval. He tried to keep troops in Iraq, even after the deadline for departure, and was rejected by the Iraqi government. Did he deserve his Nobel Peace Prize? About some of the politics of this, because you suggested implicitly at the start of this programme and elsewhere you've suggested explicitly that some of the climate scientists working in this field are pressured, they're doing it for political reasons, job reasons, financial reasons, but your critics would say that the reverse is true, that in fact the kind of small band of people who disagree with the consensus, however you want to define it, are actually the people who are getting funding from the fossil fuel industry, from big oil, from big coal. Does it bother you that those are the kind of people who are on your side?
No. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm terrifically happy about that. I don't know what you're talking about.
So why throw around these sweeping statements about religion? Not the God of the Old Testament, but religion itself being evil. I mean, do you believe religion is evil?
No.
But you say plenty of times in this book that religion is evil. You said in a speech famously that I think a case can be made that faith is one of the world's great evils, comparable to the smallpox virus, but harder to eradicate.
I do think that, yes.
You yourself are not just a former regulator, you're also a former banker. You started off your career in banking. Yep. I think you were vice president for Merrill Lynch Europe from 2000 to 2006. Here's what I'm wondering. When you were working at Merrill Lynch in the top layers of that institution, did you say to your fellow bankers then what you're saying now in books like Economics After the Crisis? Were you talking about...
No, I mean, the role I did in Merrill Lynch was focused on the mergers and acquisitions area.
Fair enough, but generally, about the general point you make about the failures.
It's a very legitimate point. You know, I was involved in debates, and there were lots of things I got wrong. I certainly made intellectual mistakes.
Democracy.
And we failed in that objective.
It is a great, great challenge. Afghanistan is on the way. We have not failed in the way you insist on putting it so dramatically. We have not yet achieved...
I'm confused at your refusal to define failure, and then you say failure is a dramatic word. It's not a dramatic word. You set an objective, you don't meet the objective, it's a failure. Violence is up, as I mentioned. We're not leaving behind a less violent country. We're not leaving behind a less peaceful.
We are leaving behind a much better educated country, for example. You put this in black and white. And I won't have that.
Okay. We'll have to agree to disagree on that.
We had a conflict. The IRA could have killed thousands of people on the streets of London if they had wanted to during the course of that conflict, and the same in the north of Ireland. And in the circumstances where innocent civilians lost their lives, it normally was on account of the IRA making a huge mistake. But yes, the reality is that innocent people lost their lives. Innocent people lose their lives in every conflict.
The big challenge. But your argument that London, thousands of people died, in my head that sounds like Well, we're not Al-Qaeda, so give us a break.
No, I'm not asking anybody to give the IRA a break.
Sounds like it. You're saying either it was accidental or it could have been much worse.
But what I'm trying to do is to disprove the notion. Because you're working from the perspective that because some people call the IRA a terrorist organisation, the IRA strategy was to go out and deliberately kill hundreds of people.
I'm saying that's what history tells us happened on several occasions. In October 1990, you talk about mistakes and accidents, the provisional IRA in your home city of Derry forced at gunpoint a Catholic man named Patrick Gillespie, who worked as a cook at a British army base. They forced him at gunpoint. They drove their car behind his to make sure he did it. They forced him to drive his car into an army checkpoint, which blew up, killing Patrick Gillespie, 4 British soldiers, and damaging 25 nearby houses. How is that not a cold-blooded killing, a murder, plain and simple?
Well, obviously people will have their interpretation of that. What was I doing in October?
You mentioned earlier, just a moment ago, you mentioned that you would like to prevent a massacre before it happens.
I'm with. Yes.
Libya is a classic example cited by people who say that by going into Libya in 2011, the French led the charge alongside the UK and the US.
Yes.
We went in to avert a massacre in Benghazi,
That's true.
and that was a humanitarian intervention. The problem is, of course, it then turned into regime change. Gaddafi was toppled. French and British special forces were calling in airstrikes. Our air forces were basically acting as rebel air forces. The UN resolution said simply protect civilians, but we went all the way to Tripoli and took out Gaddafi, who was then pretty brutally killed. How can you say it's a humanitarian intervention looking back now, given it didn't stick to the strict parameters of protecting Benghazi?
At the beginning, it was something to protect the citizen of Benghazi, and it was right. But I'm sorry, there is some rules. You cannot just eat and leave. And certainly we had to protect the people. You have to be, let's say, human rights fighter by advance. To protect human rights is a long, long story, and this is difficult when you are marked up.
Are you really saying that you went into Libya to protect Benghazi, and we just got carried away and ended up in Tripoli?
Yes.
Really?
No, but we did.
You
That's
didn't go
exactly
into
what we
Gaddafi.
did.
That wasn't the original intent.
No, certainly not. It was not. We came in the name of the Security Council, and we overrun
and many of those Security Council members say you violated Resolution 1973 by going all the way to Tripoli.
That's not completely untrue.
Okay.
But at the beginning,
I
we
do love
came...
That phrase. That's a new one for me. Not completely untrue. Post-Gaddafi Libya, something else that's not...
to be used, because I will use it several times.
Please do. Please do. Let me use it. What's not completely untrue also is that post-Gaddafi Libya isn't the greatest of places to live today.
Not only it was not completely true, but it was right.
Okay.
Chaotic Middle East.
Danny, in that period you're referring to, the number of settlements, illegal settlements, your settlements are considered illegal under international law.
Not by me.
No, by international law, Danny.
Well, that's a matter of discussion.
That's not a matter of discussion.
This is a matter of discussion.
Perhaps for you and your settler friends. For the rest of the world, there's really no discussion.
No, I mean, show me the tribunal that have decided that. And
I believe it's called the International Court of Justice.
Ruled
in 2004 that settlements were a violation of the 4th Geneva Convention.
Okay, let's talk about the 4th Geneva Convention, okay?
You reject the 4th Geneva Convention?
No, I don't reject it. It doesn't apply to Judea and Samaria. Very simple.
Even though the International Court of Justice says it applies, the International Committee for the Red Cross says it applies, the European Union says it applies, the UN Security Council says it applies, the US State Department says it applies. Everyone in the world says it applies, apart from you, Danny. So I'm confused here when you say it to discuss.
I will be glad to explain why it doesn't apply, but...
The 4th Geneva Convention, just for the purpose of our viewers, says that an occupying power cannot transfer parts of its population, i.e. you, into an occupied zone.
I am a layman. I am not a jurist, but my, common sense that I challenge you to answer it is: if we are the occupying power according to the 4th Geneva Convention, which country did we occupy? Which state did we occupy? We didn't occupy any state. I mean,
and yet that argument was
that
argument of the layman was rejected in 2004.
No, it was not. It was not rejected by very important jurists.
International Court of Justice. I'm asking a very simple question. The ICJ in 2004 said you're wrong. Dismiss that argument.
That's one answer.
Do you reject the ICJ? Is a simple question, yes or no?
I think it's completely erroneous. Israel's policy is based on legal advice. Dr. Alan Baker, in the Levy report, explains perfectly well why the Fourth Geneva Convention does not apply
for the
to
purposes
Judea
of our
and
audience,
Samaria.
can you tell us where Dr. Alan Baker lives?
As far as I know, in Jerusalem.
No,
he's not a settler.
He lives in a settlement.
No, he's not.
He
a
lives in a
settler.
settlement.
No, he's not a settler.
And he works for a
Give me
settler
break.
organisation.
He's not
who's lobbying
a
on behalf of
settler.
the settlement.
He was
That
the
is
Israeli
that is the kind of
ambassador.
people you're
He was the
bringing
Israeli
forward.
ambassador to Canada.
Do you
A
accept the
person-
authority of the UN Security Council?
Well, there are rules which decisions of the UN Security Council apply or not. By the
Oh, you
way,
get to pick and choose resolutions?
no, there is no. Look,
bet Saddam Hussein wish he'd known that.
Mehdi, look. There are rules which Security Council resolutions are binding, which Security Council resolutions are not binding.
So when UN Security Council Resolution 465 says Israel must cease immediately building settlements, that's not binding. That's something to pick and choose.
I don't know. Again, you can bring these issues.
It's quite important. You can't fall back on I don't.